Like nature fell short in their
Yeah,
worldview.
in
Nature
my
is
new book,
wrong. And
I have a discussion of Avatar and Fern Gully and Alien, and this is a good tie-in because there's a lot of similarities between in Alien the idea of man and the universe being an abortion, which is this kind of Gnostic doctrine. And if you think about it, that's essentially what the point of like the aliens busting out of the gut, in the old Alien series by Ridley Scott is. And Ridley
Mhm.
Scott even said, I think he said at times like, well, there's an aspect to this which is about abortion and is humanity an abortion and all this stuff. And
Oh well.
and it starts to make sense when you realize that he utilized the artwork of H.R. Giger,
Yep.
who was a big devotee of Crowley. So I put all that in the new book, and the reason it ties into uh, Avatar was just this idea of, again, that man is the problem, man is the disease, man is what's causing all these problems, and together we have to unite and prepare for the coming body mod cyborg revolution that's coming. Once we start getting the microchips implanted, and then once we start getting, eye patches that like fashionable eye patches that can see through walls and tell us everything about. I mean, they tried that with Google Glasses, but whatever they bring, whatever they bring out, is going to be sold as a right, a human right, and that's what Timothy Leary said. He said, I had more success selling people on blowing their minds out on LSD by telling them that their rights were being suppressed than anything else. So all they have to do is couch it in the next phase of civil liberties, and all the dum-dums, all the NPC zombies are going to jump on board because that's the easiest way to manipulate people. And that's what the plot of Blade Runner 2049 is about, is the Guyan Rosling character. He thinks that he's an NPC, and then what does he find out? He's part of the bot revolution, and so he gives his life for the revolutionary cause of the replicants versus the old broken humans.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in also the character that Jared Leto plays in that film. He was a really fascinating example, right? Because as you go up higher in the human hierarchy in the Blade Runner 2049 universe, the humans are more inhuman than the bots, than
Right.
the robots. And there was even a moment in the film where I came up with a theory. Well, maybe the bots and the actual robots are really human. Maybe they're actually human, being born like biologically, and they're just ritualistically programming everybody to dehumanize them, and that because what's his face? I mean, there's probably reasons in the film that this wouldn't work. This theory might not work, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about now. When what's his face, Leto, who doesn't Jared Leto own the Laurel Canyon house where the military base was?
Exactly. Yeah, he bought the. I'm not sure if he still does, but at least he did for a long time. I think he still owns the Lookout Mountain Studio is his house, and he converted it over into a house.
I'm trying to pull up a screenshot of Leto's character, but he's so fascinating. In one scene, he actually sacrifices one of his replicants. She drops out of the sky, out of the the top of the building, out of some like tube thing, and
tube of goo, yeah.
And he cuts her womb, and he does it in a very ritualistic way. And the way that he's talking, it's a really strange scene that almost makes sense if you think from the perspective that I was just proposing, that maybe the replicants were just real humans, and they're so dehumanized, and the world was so fallen and so twisted and so in this transhumanist madness that people would believe it.
That's an interesting analysis. I think that it's hard to know exactly where they were taking the second one. I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't think it was amazing. I thought it was a decent attempt at a sequel, but in that scene that you're talking about, I just watched that. I got to that part right before we did the show, and what he says there is that he says that I am going to create a new branch of angels. Like I'm going to create a new series of angels, and he's like, we're going to storm heaven and retake Eden, and that's actually a direct quote from Crowley.
Yes.
Crowley said that in the future that that he would like to see: the storming of heaven, the retaking of Eden, and you can find parallels between Crowleyanism and transhumanism as well. I think at root it is Crowleyan, but
Who wrote the book Storming Heaven? Wasn't that Leary? Wasn't that Leary's book Storming Heaven? Or was that a different?
he may. There's a guy called Jay Stevens who did an analysis of the history of LSD and culture.
Okay, that's it.
Who's not really? He's just like a mainline academic. It's a pretty good book though. But he said that he called it Storming Heaven.
Yeah, you're right.
But he probably did name it after Leary, and Leary would have got it from Crowley, because he was a huge devotee. But yeah, that is essentially what the Jared Leto character is saying. He's like I'm going to create a new slave race. That's what he says. He says we need a slave race of people who do what I fucking say, and then we'll storm heaven, and we'll get rid of all of these broke ass humans that are the old models that can't be fixed.
Yeah. And he's upgrading now. I started watching it again yesterday too. I didn't get through the whole film either. I'm scrolling through it right now. Looking for some interesting screenshots. I think the beginning of the movie is really interesting as far as like the whole smart city, the millennials paradise, the smart city. So you watched it recently too, right? So you're pretty fresh on exactly what, it opens up showing just these massive like solar array panel things in the middle of California, and it's this overhead shot. And then it shows them harvesting bugs. A man harvesting protein. He's on a protein farm, and people are now eating bugs because they can't have cows, which is really funny. Because
this is Ask Yourself and Vegan Gains this is their version of the future. Like we're looking at
this
is what they see. Yeah, because we haven't listened to them. And the Rockefeller Foundation, what we have is giant mass pollution everywhere. We can't see the sun anymore, right? That's why they're having to grow this stuff in this weird way, is because the sun's been blocked out from all of the pollution because of the overcrowded LA megacity, which ironic because it's the elite who want the megacities. It's the elite who want to spray the skies, according to Cass Sunstein, to blot out the sun. Mm-hmm. Wall Street Journal just put an article out last week saying scientists are just now going to experiment with blocking out the sun because of global warming. But the movie says, oh, no. It's because of overpopulation and pollution that the sun's been, we're supposed to think that the sun's been blotted out. And so, yes, we're having to basically have giant bug farms to feed everybody and give them their protein, because everything is synthetic. It's hard to tell the difference between what's real and fake in this future. Mm-hmm. So if you were to eat something synthetic like meat, I guess it doesn't give you nutrition. I don't know. Or eating meat's forbidden probably in this.
I would guess it's all rationed, right? Because the only time we see him eating, I think, is when he goes home, right? He goes home after this little journey, and he meets his girlfriend. And who's his girlfriend in this movie?
Yeah, his synthetic virtual CGI girlfriend.
His chick is a oops. Sorry, we're hearing some audio from Blade Runner right now. I don't want to get
his sim girlfriend.
Yeah, his sim girlfriend. She is an AI program that is in his home, and she's basically Alexa, who projects from a monitor.
Good point.
Yeah, and he gets a gift, right? Like, so he can bring her portable.
He gets downloadable content to make his girlfriend be able to leave his shithole coffin apartment.
Mm-hmm. Which is literally that's where most of these vegans who are out there propagandizing you guys into. That's where these people already live. They live in coffin apartments in LA and Toronto. So I'm trying to find a shot of his apartment. He comes into his apartment, he jumps in the shower, and it gives him like 10 seconds of shower water. And that's all he gets.
His ration, yeah.
But when you look at Jared Leto's character, he's like in this, I don't know.
Palace.
He's in a palace, right? I don't know. I'm not sure if it was a pyramid. Back in the other film, it was in a pyramid.
It was a giant pyramid, yeah.
His room that he's in is filled with water.
That's a good point.
It's infinite water around him. It's water reflecting all the wind. And I think that's kind of interesting because when you look at you see the 5G rollout now, right? So one of the things that actually will weaken electromagnetic frequencies and radiation is going to be water. So trees will interfere with it. Rain, water does interfere with the with EMF. So I think it's an interesting detail that they put in there of. There's probably different factions in this hypothetical future that Blade Runner exists in, which isn't that far off from where we're at right now. But there's probably other
Right.
factions and corporations that are battling it out for power. And so surrounding the head of the corporation's lair with water would perhaps protect him from attack from other weapon systems around. I think that's kind of a funny
That is an
detail.
interesting point, and that comes up in Signs too. If you remember, the only thing that defeats the demonic entities is water. Um, just side note there, because we just talked about that on another podcast the other night. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There are some interesting symbolic elements to this. I think that the that tree at the beginning where he finds the body of the remains of Rachel. This is where we're led into the idea of it being a miraculous birth, because she's a replicant too at the end of the first Blade Runner, and so it's impossible that she can give birth. Oh, but it's a miraculous birth. She's somehow able to.
That's
So we
why
have
my
the new-
theory, it's like, well, maybe they're just human and it's all bullshit. They're just lying.
Well, in the first one, if we want to take seriously the first one, which is obviously a far superior film, Ridley Scott did say that Deckard is a replicant, because there is the scene where his eyes light up red. So I think Philip K. Dick is kind of, since it's based on his work. By the way, did you know part of the reason Philip K. Dick was able to put so much of this into his fiction is because he was actually hanging out with the Silicon Valley people back in the 60s and 70s. So he actually knew where they were going to take all this stuff back then. So he wasn't like magically, talking to aliens. He was just hanging out with these Silicon Valley type people, Pentagon types.
Yeah.
So he knew what was coming. So that's when you're watching Blade Runner, you're getting Philip K. Dick, you're getting the sort of predictive programming from, guys hanging out at the Pentagon. And I think 2049 is just another update version of that. But yeah, it's a replacement version of a new mythos, the new Christ mythos, the Moses mythos, miraculous birth mythos in the Bible in Genesis. When, her name is Rachel, and at one point Wallace, the Leto character, even refers to the biblical story of Rachel and Leah. And Rachel's the one that's barren, and God miraculously opens her womb in the story of Jacob and Rachel and Leah. Thus, we're supposed to again think that the reference to Rachel, the Mary Sean Young character giving birth, is a miraculous event, and this is the bot revolution that's gonna stop. It doesn't really even make sense like why there would be a revolution, because Jared Leto just represents, like I was talking about earlier, he represents like the alt-right version of the revolution, the Crowleyan version of it, the Nietzschean version of it.
Yeah, he represents like the millennial. He's the quintessential millennial, right? Because in 2049 he'll be an adult. He'll have come to fruition, and he's totally modified. Even his eyes are, whatever is in his eyes. They do a good job. I think they did a great job with his character of making it vague. And I like you not knowing what. I mean, he's got this thing in his neck, and it's just like a little light. So you don't even know what level of humanity is left in this thing that's supposedly a man.
Right.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate millennial. He would have been growing up in my generation and been, a grown man at that time. And his whole thing is, go ahead.
He's basically the Monsanto Bayer new human factory. That's what he's up to. It's just a cloning bot replicant factory. He kind of represents a version of God the Father, like a Gnostic evil version of God the Father in a way, because he's he wants to be the father of the new humanity that's going to replace the human race. But what I'm saying is that his opposition, or who we're supposed to think is his opposition, is Ryan Gosling and the revolutionaries who meet underground, and like they're gonna start the revolution. And so it's like Antifa versus Crowley, and like Crowley and Antifa are on the same team.
It's pretty funny, right? I feel like they put that revolution thing in there just because of kind of it in line with the spirit of the age kind of thing. Everyone wants the fake revolution, and you got the
and he's patriarchal too. Don't forget, like he has a woman in subjection to him. He has the hot secretary. He cuts open the wombs and then tosses them away. He doesn't need them. But the revolutionaries, they're led by women. They've got a bunch of women everywhere.
It's all feminist, and they have like their eyes popped out, so they got the one eye
versus
symbols.
the evil patriarch.
Yeah.
Oh, but don't forget too, there was child trafficking that was also a reference. There's
Yeah.
also a reference to that because
And
was
child programming, right? Because what's that guy doing with
yes,
all these little rat kids?
it's kids exactly.
He's got
Yeah.
this whole underground thing of all these little thieves, and it's kind of like in Game of Thrones. You have the
Yep.
Meister has like his army of little kids that do his bidding. This guy's got that going on under there. And
Mhm.
also Ryan Gosling's character has these supposedly, I guess we learned that they're implanted somehow or something. Is that what
Planted memory.
they were
Yeah.
implanted? But he has memories of being down there in that underground situation, being programmed like these kids. So it's very weird. I feel like there's certain things they put in there. It's like, all right, we'll never tie up this loose end, and if we keep this loose, it gives this great mystique to the whole thing. And some of them were corny, but some of it worked. I think the transhumanism angle was that they handled it pretty well. It was relatively realistic, especially Jared Leto's character being so given over, so just openly satanic, and spilling blood at times, sacrificing his own little
Yeah.
creations. And
It is. He says we make angels at the service of civilization. I'm going to create a new nine, which is basically a new hierarchy of angels that are going to take over. He says there's not going to be any imperfections or falls anymore. He says we'll own the stars, we'll storm heaven, retake Eden. So he definitely has that role, and he's evil patriarchal raper man, right? That's what his character's supposed to be. He wants slavery, and then Ryan Gosling believes in equality, and they're going to be led by the miraculous, not man. It's not a new Jesus or male that's born miraculously. It's a new woman who's born miraculously. Who's gonna lead the Gaia revolution.
yeah, it's funny. And then I haven't even got to the end of the film again, so I forget exactly how they flesh it out. But she just is kind of a prisoner in this digital cage her whole life, right? The
Yeah,
supposed
she
Messiah.
has the ability to. She's very creative, so she kind of represents the power of the imagination and creativity, and that's supposedly been lost, I guess. So they're harvesting her creativity because she's superior to everybody because of her feminine creative principle, and she can tap directly into the ether or whatever and create this stuff.
She's like
Um,
dialed into Gaia.
Yeah, so but and they're parasitically sapping on her for her ideas and whatnot, and she's the miraculous birth. We learned that she was the one that Rachel gave birth to.
Yeah, I think the first half of the film is better before they start trying to flesh out the silly story. The universe that they revealed in it was very telling. Um,
Well, that obsession with the synthetic is very prophetic. The multicultural hellhole is very prophetic. That was in the first one too. I agree with you. I like the character that Leto is. It's just that the mythos, the mythology of it in the end, I think ended up being kind of a typical kind of social justice type mythology.
yeah, it was kind of weak, but definitely in line with the original's theme, like the Gnostic thing. I mean, you had
Hmm.
Roy Batty choking his dad to death, or his creator to
Yeah,
death, in that
yeah.
film, in the first one, which was very Gnostic and kind of satanic. And
Luciferian, yeah, that's just Satan rebelling against his father.